Now, what I'd like to do is I'd like to plug this definition of freedom and this experience of freedom and human autonomy into a couple real cases of artificial intelligence in the area, especially in the area of um, very human area of existence and in practice. Um, and the first one is this case that I myself worked on several years ago. This is a company that uses AI to do a very AI thing. That is, you go into the office and the company measures your heartbeat. You've seen this is called in English, this is called an EKG. They attach electrodes to your chest and simply have you sit for a while, and the electrodes measure how your heart is beating. Now, as it turns out, the human heart, and as you may or may not know, actually has four chambers. So a human heartbeat is far more complex than it appears in the Hollywood movies. It's not just sort of a beat. There's actually each of the four chambers beats at each time. And so, in each general beat. And so there are a lot of measurements that can be taken in any single heartbeat. There are the measurements, for example, between the time between each of the four compartments beats. And there's also the measurement of the relative strength of each of those beats. And then, of course, there's the time between beats. And then you can compare over time each single compartment's beating, right? The smallest compartment from one to the next, and then the second smallest, and so on. And you can compare over time the quality of 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 the entire beat. So there are many measurements in a heartbeat, and I'm trying to. I do show, I think, in this slide a number of them. Obviously, if that's one single heartbeat, and you have all of these measurements that you can take, and you do take with the EKG, a human being in just a few heartbeats is going to be overwhelmed. No human being is going to be able to keep track of the significance of all of these different measurements. And then imagine these measurements going on over time, over 10 minutes. And then imagine comparing my long set of numerical measurements, numbers that come out of my EKG, with the measurements of 10,000 other EKG strips. Well, I mean, the numbers are astronomical. No human being could possibly make sense of all of those measurements and compare one against the other. But this is exactly the kind of thing that artificial intelligence is very good at. AI goes right in, filters through this mountain of numbers, and finds patterns. Now, if we have enough data and enough patterns, then you can see that it will not be very difficult for something which ultimately is fairly simple, right? Just the beats of the heart. It will not be very difficult to predict what my heart history will be in the future. If we have all of these other patients who've come in and given their data, and we have these heartbeats, and we can then see longitudinally what will happen to them in 1 month, 1 year, 5 years, 10 years, and so on. Uh, Obviously, the kind of thing an AI can do is match up my heartbeat with different kinds of patients at different moments and project forward to see, well, what will happen in the future with my heart. It's a very effective AI tool. It's just the kind of thing that AI does well. Now, once you have a tool like this, there are questions, especially how should this tool be tuned? That is, how should we use it? What should we seek for its outcome when it is administered to a patient? So, for example, a kind of medical question might be, and we found this when we talked with doctors, doctors are health freaks. They really want to keep people biologically healthy. So when a doctor looks at this machine, when they see that EKG reading like mine gives even the slightest indication that there might be a heart problem in the future, then right away, they want to start treatment and even have you take drugs. There are all kinds of common drugs you can take to lower your cholesterol, these kinds of things. There's a whole battery of ways that you can live, which will in fact increase your heart health. Now, one problem with these ways of living is that frequently they're not very fun. Um, for example, you're not supposed to drink as much beer. You're not supposed to eat as much pizza. Well, those are the good things. Someone could ask fairly reasonably, what good does it do to be alive if I can't drink beer and eat pizza? Now, I'm being a bit facetious, but I think you understand my point. If we use a purely medical definition of success or failure for this machine, then what we will end up doing is consigning nearly everyone to living all of their time worried about their heart, changing their diet, doing all kinds of exercises, and so on. When we worked with this machine, we brought up the point, we said, look, that's a medical definition of how the machine should work well. It should find anyone who has the least risk and put them into some kind of treatment stream. But you can also define success differently. You can also define success in terms of human autonomy. In what way can this machine be used to increase human autonomy? And it seems like there, things are a little bit different. Um, as I say, the kinds of things that I want to do with my life include drinking beer and having pizza. I want to be free to do those things. And if doing those things raises my risk of a heart attack 0.01% in the next year, or 1% in the next year, and 5% in the next decade, uh, I think I'm probably willing to take that risk. There is, of course, remember, there is a baseline risk, right? All of us at any moment, any one of us could have a heart attack and unfortunately pass away. Could happen literally to anyone at any time. So let's just say, I'm going to make numbers up, but let's just say there's a baseline risk for someone my age. Anyone my age has a baseline risk of 10% that this year they will have a heart attack. I don't know what the risk is, but let's just say that. Right? So if I can decrease my risk from 10% to 9% by not eating pizza and not drinking beer, a doctor might say, look, that's what we want. That increases your biological health. Yes, but it doesn't increase my autonomy. It doesn't increase my freedom to do the things that I want to do. So the question for a machine like this is, if we want to use it to maximize human autonomy, then where do we put the kinds of thresholds that the machine will mark? At what point do we say the machine should issue some kind of warning that you should go see a doctor or make changes in your life? If the baseline rate of risk for me is 10%, and the machine shows that I have an 11% risk of heart attack in the next year, is that enough for the machine to say I should go see a doctor and change my life? 11% instead of 10%? I'm not sure. What about 15%? What about 20? The question is, if we want patients to increase their freedom, where should that line be? If the line is, if it's 90%, if there is a 90% chance that I will have a heart attack next year, the machine says, well, then should I go to the doctor? Yes, absolutely. Because you can't be free if you're dead, right? So keeping people alive, that counts. That's very positive. And if you want to increase human autonomy, keeping people alive is a very good way to do that. The question is, where is the line, right, between keeping people alive, which is good, and detracting from their freedom because there's a tiny incidental risk of heart attack because I have another beer. I'm not sure what the answer to that question is, but I am sure that this is a question which will yield a different idea or a different kind of threshold for um, a person who is optimizing the machine for human freedom than it will for the doctor or the person who's optimizing for biological health. Now, concretely in the case of this tool, initially the tool was going to produce just a red and a green output. A green output meaning just go on with your life, red, go see a doctor. Um, Subsequently, there was introduced a yellow output, which gave some more autonomy to the patient to say, look, here in this zone, there is a slight risk, increased risk of heart attack for you above the normal threshold, but it's not a great risk. And then there's the red where the risk is quite high. So we set up those three levels, but that doesn't answer the basic question. It doesn't answer the question, well, where should the thresholds be to begin with? Do we say that just 1% additional risk is enough to raise the yellow flag? 5%? 10%? Does that change with age? For example, if somebody is getting on toward my number of years, um, should the threshold be lower or should it be higher? I mean, you might say that someone who is younger and has more time to live, a slight increase in their heart attack risk might might be a good idea to go see a doctor because there are more years on the line. In my case, there are not so many years left. So you think, in order to save a few more years of life, in order to have more freedom 10 years from now, how much freedom am I willing to give up today? How much less am I willing to do that I want to do in order to have a couple more years at the end? Those are extremely difficult questions, but they're the kinds of questions that you ask if you optimize a machine like this for human freedom. Now, here is a different example, but which raises some of the same kinds of autonomy questions in artificial intelligence. This is dynamic insurance. And dynamic insurance is the idea that when you're covered for things like car accidents in your car, or in the United States, we have private health insurance. So you pay a company to provide health insurance. Dynamic insurance is the idea that the rates that you are charged for your insurance can go up or down depending upon your behavior. So we do have this now here in cars in the United States. You can plug a box into your car, and it will keep track of things like how fast you go, how quickly you accelerate, how frequently you have to brake very rapidly, that kind of thing. And from that information, the insurance company can predict how likely you are to have an accident in the future. So, dynamic insurance is any use of that kind of user information to define the kind of risk that they represent. And then, of course, the company can encourage you to use this tool by giving you a rate deduction. You pay less if you use the tool, and subsequently, if you show that you are low risk. So, for driving, if you plug that box into your car, you feel like someone is watching you. So you're going to drive more slowly and more safely, and so on. Here, we are looking at an example of health insurance, and we are imagining that you have connected to your phone a, uh, uh, a kind of app which monitors where you are and what you're doing. And you can imagine for health insurance that literally when you are skiing, you go to the top of the mountain and there's a double black diamond run, which is, the most difficult and dangerous of the runs. At that point, just as you are about to go down, your telephone could kind of ding, ding, And that's your health insurance giving you a notification that if you go down that mountain or that run, the double black diamond, then your health insurance premium will go up. You have to pay more. The question is, does this increase your human autonomy? Does this increase your freedom? And it's a very hard question because, on the one hand, the reason that we get insurance in the first place, usually, is that so we can do things like take risks. The reason I want health insurance is so that when I go skiing, I can take a black diamond run that kind of is at the edge of my ability. That's fun. That's a challenge. It's good. But it's possible that I will break my leg. It's very possible, right? So if I have this monitoring system of the dynamic insurance, then I hear this ding, ding, ding. Of course, this is going to limit my desire to take these difficult runs. Of course, it's going to limit the choices that I have for myself. So it seems like on one side, this dynamic insurance does limit my autonomy operationally. But then on the other side, on that fundamental side or the structural side that we've been talking about, it's also true that I'm the one that decided to use this dynamic insurance. Just like in the previous example in Cardiccio, I'm the one that decided to get the EKG. Right? So we have again here this split between a kind of structural freedom and an operational freedom. And we have, especially in the case of this insurance, an example of how the two conflict with each other. You can have this structural freedom, right? You choose to use the AI healthcare app to save money, but then it takes away from your autonomy because you're not willing to go down the challenging runs anymore. So those are two cases of autonomy dilemmas, two ways that artificial intelligence today is intersecting with our human ability to make decisions. Of course, it's true that on one side, AI is giving us many, many more decisions and much, much more freedom. It's just obvious. Anyone who has used LinkedIn sees that the kinds of job opportunities that are available to us on our computer screens exist in every continent, in all kinds of different fields. Those are things that would have been impossible 10 years ago. In terms of my job search and your job search, we have much, much more freedom than we've ever had on one level in terms of the things that AI is giving us in terms of job choices. But on that other level, it's also true that it's starting to chip away at some of our autonomy. Because now, even though many more companies will hire us, there are also many companies that see who we are, our background, and they will not hire us. That's especially true, by the way, for someone like me, a philosopher. That's a very specific skill set. I'm very good at some things, but I'm really bad at other stuff. Many companies will say, look, I just will not hire a philosopher because he probably spends too much time thinking about stuff. And that's true. Like, you probably do not want to hire me for jobs that require fast decisions. You definitely do not. I make decisions very slowly. Um, so at the same time that I'm getting more options, like I have job opportunities now in Australia, New Zealand, Argentina, Trento, Milan, etc. Instead of getting more, not only do I have more options, but I'm also losing options. And we saw the same thing in terms of dynamic insurance. So the question we are asking here about human autonomy and human freedom is one, in what ways does AI give and what ways does it take away? And then two, in the case of Cardiccio, going back to that, um, the kind of question we were asking was, well, how can an AI tool be optimized? How should we think, how should we conceive the artificial intelligence tool so that it maximizes for human autonomy, as opposed to maximizing for, let's say, the medical goal of keeping people alive? So there's kind of two steps here that we're taking in our discussion of autonomy. First, we're saying, look, when we think about AI tools in terms of what we can do and can't do, That way of thinking, which is autonomy, is fundamentally different from other ways of thinking and other manners in which an AI tool might be tuned. There could not be a more direct example than this, the Cardisio case. Medical doctors are going to tune the tool. I know them. I've met them. I've worked with them. I know it. This is the way they think. They are always going to want to tune the tool to keep you alive as long as possible. That's the way they think. But that does not maximize your autonomy. I mean, we can keep humans alive by having to spend all of our time doing boring things and doing lots of exercises, but that's not freedom. Right? Freedom and autonomy is the ability to do things with your life, to make decisions about what you want, and then try to get those things. And those things require risk. They require risk even to your life. The question is, how much risk are you willing to accept in order to be free? And again, I don't know what the answer is to that question, but that question itself is the heart of what we're looking at here. And just bringing the question up, reflecting upon it, that's what this seminar is about. It's about thinking about autonomy as a way of optimizing AI tools instead of biology or instead of financial profit and so on. Right. So that is the end of the uh, four ideas that I wanted to present today.